when the first nomadic humans traveled west of the World's Edge Mountains to the lands that would become the Empire. They did so escaping the vast hordes of savage greenskins that were running rampant. Many thousands of humans, divided in tribes, migrated west to start a new life. One of those tribes, the Bretonnia, traveled further and crossed the Grey Mountains, settling in those lands, giving them their own name. Being a tribe forged in war and with strong people, they got rid of the greenskins that had managed to reach those territories, and soon the Bretonnia became the dominant culture beyond the Grey Mountains. The highly independent warlords of the Bretonnia lands refused to unite with the Empire, after an invitation from Sigmar was rejected due to having many differences in their core society values. The Bretonnia folk had a culture that revolved around chivalry, honor, social birthright, nobility, and pride. They would not accept Sigmar as their leader, as he was a foreigner to them. In the year 770 of the imperial calendar, Bretonnia was far from being united. Weakened by its divisions, 16 different dukedoms had been formed since the first humans settled there. The greenskins had been multiplying in numbers for many years at this point. When the men of Bretonnia started to notice the growing threat, it was too late. The many invasions and raids began to grow in intensity. It took 160 more years for the threat to fully materialize, but once it did, it seemed unstoppable. A massive horde of orcs emerged with an unstoppable fury and began to quickly overrun the lands of Kulu. After some valiant resistance, every last one of the knights of Kulu was killed in battle. And only did the united armies of Kinel and Brion stop the orc invasion, but they failed to strike at the source of the threat. The orc armies soon returned, and by the year 948 IC, a deluge of green warriors was drowning Bretonnia in violence and destruction. The northern lands were being overrun by Norscan raiders attacking the coasts. The lords and dukes in the north had to take shelter within their castles while their lands were being pillaged and burned. Greenskins were running rampant again, on apparently all sides. Beastmen hordes emerged from the forest of Ardennes. And the armies of the undead were arriving from the west in their skeletal warships, bringing death and desolation with them. Any attempts at resistance failed, as the fragmented knights were destroyed one by the encroaching enemy. All seemed lost. It was sometime between the years 974 and 977 of the imperial calendar that a much-needed leader emerged. Somebody to unite the desperate men of Bretonnia against their foes and towards their liberation, known as Gilles le Breton. He was already famous for slaying Smirgus, a great red worm the size of a castle that swallowed horses whole. Gilles was joined under a common banner by the Dukes of Lyonesse and Mousillon. Initially they offered resistance, but soon they realized that their efforts were in vain, as even their united armies were being overwhelmed by the orcs. A change in the tide came when the Bretonnia host camped beside a lake, attempting to rest before a seemingly inevitable battle against a far larger greenskin force. When Gilles was drawing water to drink, it is said that a young, ghostly woman appeared, with porcelain skin and fair hair covered by a white veil, looking like a blessing sent from the heavens. Stunned by the vision and driven by desperation, Gilles grabbed and raised the tattered and bloodied banner of his host, crying out, "Lady, wouldst thou bless mine banner?" As he dipped it into the lake's waters, its textiles repaired and its colors and shapes shifted. Amazed, he raised it to show the miracle to his men. The pristine, glowing banner was now decorated with an icon of a golden chalice. The apparition was indeed the Lady of the Lake. Purity, nobility, and courage personified. The men followed Gilles' example. They all dipped their weapons in the water, asking the mysterious Lady of the Lake for her blessing, even leading their horses into the waters for the animals to also be enchanted before the battle. The beautiful lady granted them all her boon, and lastly, produced the very chalice, as miraculously as she emblazoned it onto the banner, and granted it to Gilles and his closest companions, the Dukes of Lyonesse and Mousillon, to drink from. As they drank, their strength was restored and their wounds healed. They have become saints amongst men, warriors amongst serfs, blessed beyond all men, and honored with a life of service to the lady. The first 3 Grail Knights. Meanwhile, the greenskin wall was drawing close. The lady blessed her armies, but she could not, or at least would not, slow time for them. Gilles' host assembled into formation and readied their ranks, and although the horizon was darkened with the enemy's numbers, the men's courage was unstained under the lady's blessing. They rode forward to meet the orcs, arrows falling everywhere around them, but miraculously missing the soldiers themselves. Their horses turned to gallop as the greenskins drew near, and the Bretonnia cavalry smashed into the enemy's ranks. Green infantry was trampled beneath their hooves, routed, slashed, and speared as they rode on. Rank after rank after rank. The impetus of the charge was seemingly unending. The host of Bretonnia was impregnable to the weapons of the orcs, as any greenskin within an arm's length of the human soldiers quickly fell to the ground, lifeless or wounded. Seeing their companions routing, overwhelmed by the momentum of the charge, or perhaps simply realizing further resistance was pointless, the Greenskins' army scattered entirely. The orcs ran and screamed in anger and fear, not able to fully comprehend what had happened to the knights. The battle dragged on for hours. It lasted until sunset. It was bloody, but it was won by the Bretonnia. Following the battle and back in camp, the knights accompanying Gio made their vows to the Lady of the Lake, swearing to honor and serve her. With this act, they have been rendered immune to the fell powers of chaos, as the belief in the nobility of the lady's cause gave them an armor of virtue, one that cannot be pierced by neither spear nor arrow. As a host bound together under one vow, they set out to free Bretonnia from occupants once more. Now, in the name of the Lady, the Grail Knights have become feared by their enemies, and esteemed by all men. As their leader went on to free Bretonnia under the glowing banner of the Grail, bestowed upon Bretonnia by the Lady.
On this channel, we are putting together narrative Total War cinematic battles and Warhammer lore videos. A special thank you goes to our Patreon supporters who help us in the making of more content. You can also directly support the channel through Patreon. Find the link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button to be the first to watch the next video. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.